we've laid all this stuff on you about what it means to be a follower and a disciple, and the fact that we need to be people of justice and get out there into the world and make a difference and lead people to you. But I guess what we want to do this afternoon is unpack just what that means. Now, I want to begin by sharing a little bit of my own experience, because I think that's probably where we learn the best. And I haven't shared really anything of myself or about me and my walk with God yet. So I wanted to just start to set the scene a little bit this afternoon. I've been an Adventist all my life, except for perhaps a couple of years when I was in my late teens, when I kind of wandered around a bit, walked on the wild side, and did the late teen, early 20 thing that a lot of people seem to think that you have to do. And I guess I learned something from that as well. But I've always been closely associated with the church. My grandfather was a pastor. My dad was a businessman who used his abilities and income stream to support the church and things like that. I followed in my grandfather's footsteps. I have the same initials. My first appointment was here in Western Australia, as was his. And there's kind of this connection and so on. But, after about, 10, 12 years in ministry, I'd worked here in Western Australia for all my ministry, pastored various churches, worked in the youth department, was transferred to the Victorian field, where I became the national director for youth ministry. And, I didn't really have much of a job description. It was just, you cared for the youth in Western Australia, whatever that means. Terry's trying to figure that one out. Now we want you to care for the youth in Australia. Do you have a job description? No, write your own. And it's like, what do you actually do? And it was partway through that journey that I realised there wasn't a single person in my life that I had any kind of meaningful relationship with that was not already an Adventist. My friends were Adventists, my colleagues were Adventists, my client base, if you want to call it that, the people that I serve, youth directors and youth leaders around Australia, all Adventists. The only people that I even spoke to who weren't Adventists were the guy at the 7-Eleven where I buy my fuel, and the girl at the checkout when I buy groceries. I mean, there was no meaningful relationship with anyone. And yet here we're being commissioned to get out there and be the salt of the earth, be life changers, world changers, and disciples. And I could argue away the idea that, I do this every day. I might not have direct, coal-faced contact with non-Adventists and non-Christians, but I'm doing the work. I'm full-time employed and, probably working double the hours that I'm paid to work, doing the ministry, but I'm not doing it directly. And it made me realise that needed to change, because even though you can step a little way back, and many of us in ministry and many of us who work for the church can do that and still argue a case that we're doing the work, I think there comes a time when you actually have to engage with the world individually, one-on-one. So I thought to myself, how do you meet people? How do you meet people who aren't Adventists? I started to think like a divorced person. Where do I go to meet people? Do I need to go to a nightclub? Do I need to, do I look into personal columns? Do I join, one of those dailies? How do you meet people, I had never had to worry about that. My life was always filled to overflowing with people, which is hard when you're an introvert, because I hate people, basically. But so where do you go to meet people? So I thought, I've got to do something. And so I thought, I've got to find a group of people that I can hang out with on a long-term basis where we have some kind of common interest so it just doesn't get really, really awkward. We've got to be able to do something together, because my experience had told me that when you work together on a common cause, then you can build relationships and build bridges and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, all right, I need to find something. So it could have been anything, but I've always been good with my hands. I used to be a tradesman. I used to make false teeth for a living before I was a minister. So I like fine work, I like intricate work, I like high quality, high standard work. So I thought, what can I do? Well, I was driving home from work one day and I went up this road in Melbourne, Dorset Road, and I see this sign on a shop and it says slot cars and model trains. And I'm going, that sounds good. I had no interest, no prior experience with any of this stuff, but I was in a little strip mall, and I pulled off the side, I go into this shop, and I'm looking around, and it was like I was in toy heaven. I mean, there was just stuff everywhere, all this really cool stuff that I was never allowed to have when I was a kid, you know. I thought, this looks so cool. And I started chatting to the guys in the shop. Now, it was interesting. I walk into the shop, and they're just really friendly. Now, they're trying to sell me something, clearly. But they're friendly. They knew how to talk to people. And I'm chatting away, you know, having a great time. And I said, are there any groups that meet around the place where they do this sort of stuff? I said, oh, yeah, there's one that meets in a basement utility room underneath the local shopping centre, which just happened to be like 2 k's from my house. And he said, they meet on a Wednesday night, but they're really strange. This is what he says, they're really strange. And I said, well, I really need to meet some people, so I'm going to start with some strange people. I mean, as soon as you say model railways, you know they're a little bit strange anyway. My daughters think I couldn't be any uncooler ever. So anyway, I go to this place, and it was interesting. It's a Wednesday night. There's this empty basement car park in the shopping centre, about 10 cars up near this door. And I park my car, and I go out, and this door is just a door on a wall, and it's got a number on it, like B771 or something. And it's just like a utility room. And I don't know what to do. There's no sign that says welcome. It's just this door. I didn't know whether I was going into a transformer room or a janitor's room. Anyway, I braved it. I just opened the door and I walked in, and 30 or so people in the room who are all doing stuff, they just look up and then they just go back to what they're doing. And I discovered what it's like for someone to walk in to a church or to a group or a club off the street cold turkey. Now, I had a need, and it kept me going back, and it was about 6 weeks before anyone actually spoke to me in a meaningful way. I'd try and insinuate myself into their conversations. And they go, who the hell are you? You just, but because there's a real elitism in this. I mean, it's such an esoteric thing, this model railway thing. It's like, they call them rivet counters, because they make a model of a train, and they do this, I kid you not. They count the exact number of rivets around the outside of a steam engine boiler, and they reproduce that on their model. And it's got to be exactly right. And if it's not, someone will tell you it's not. And it's just like coming to an Adventist church. It's a fascinating experience. So anyway, after about 5 or 6 weeks, and I'm going to take the mickey out of us a little bit this afternoon, so bear with me if I do that. I don't mean it, but I do. Anyway, so finally this guy comes over and he said, you've been coming here for a few weeks now, haven't you? I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, I've been watching you. And I said, oh, that's creepy. But thanks. And he's this big old guy, he's got a big bushy white beard, and he starts chatting away. And I discovered with these people that when they actually do find someone who talks to them and who listens to them, once you open the floodgates, it doesn't stop. Because these people, they're very focused. But when you start to talk, they just talk. Because no one normally listens to them because their wives are embarrassed about them and their kids are embarrassed about them. Everybody's embarrassed about them because they're in toy trains. Strange stuff. So anyway, I'm talking to this guy and he tells me like his whole life story. And I'm getting all this stuff. And he says, I grew up in England. My dad was a pub owner and then I was an electrician and I did this and then I was a shop steward and a trade unionist and I hate those capitalist scum, and he's really getting into it. And then he starts telling me that he's an atheist and he doesn't believe in God, and all this stuff's coming out. And I'm going, man, I just want to look at the trains, and it's all just spewing out. And finally he stops to draw breath and he says, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a priest. And he just, jaw dropped. And I said, well, I'm not actually a priest, I'm a minister, but I'm probably the closest thing to a priest you're ever going to see. And we just started chatting about that. And he had all these questions, and he just wanted to nail me about God. So this was my introduction to the model. I'd given it to God. I said, I want to go to a place where I can have meaningful relationships with non-Christian people. And the first person he brings into my life is an evangelistic atheist. A guy who wants everybody else to be an atheist as well. And so, time went on. I went back a few times and this group had a display at a local market day. And it was a Big Boys Toys thing. And they had all these, different groups coming in. And we go there, and we were rostered on. I get rostered on with this guy. I've got like 6 hours ahead of us, manning this Thomas the Tank Engine train set for kids to play with. and nobody comes to the exhibition. And so it's like the morgue. It's deathly quiet, and we've got nothing to do all day except sit and look at each other. And he claps his hands and rubs them together, and he says, "So, priest, tell me about this intercessory prayer business. How does that work?" And he just one after the other starts firing all these questions at me. And ever since then, and that's probably 8-10 years ago now, and we are still really, really close friends. He's still an atheist. I'm still a Christian. We both lament for each other's souls. Or in his case, he laments for the emptiness in my heart because I have no soul. But we just love each other to death. He's one of my best friends. He's a really special guy. Now, he's the kind of guy that even though he doesn't believe, he respects. And when we have stuff that we need to be done, he's there. When we have a Pathfinder camporee and we need to make 15-foot high angels, he's making them. And he's round at my house with a jigsaw and a paintbrush and everything, and he's cutting out angel wings. And he walks past me with a pair of angel wings under his arm. And he walks past and goes, "Closest I'm ever going to come to a pair of these." And I turn around and say, "Well, you never know. Never know, you might not like to hear it, but from what I can see, you live your life according to the principles of the kingdom of God." And he's still out there doing it. Interesting thing. Now, I can talk to this guy till the cows come home. It's unlikely that he's going to ever change his mind about what I can prove to him. This guy's a very, very smart guy. He did his degrees in political science and ethics. He's a smart guy. I've given him books on apologetics and all the rest of it. He knows about all the isms, he knows everything else. But that's who he is, and I love him for who he is. Now, I guess the question we face then as Christians is, what do we do with all that? So if you've got your Bibles with you, I'd like you to open them up and have a look at a couple of passages of Scripture. The first one we want to look at is Psalm 19, 1-6. Some of you probably know this off by heart, but let's have a look at it anyway. Psalm 19, and starting at verse 1. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known. And we might just cue up that video I've got there down the back. We'll show that in a minute. But I'll keep going. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known. They speak without a sound or word. Their voice is never heard. Yet their message has gone out throughout the earth and their words to all the world. God has made a home in the heavens for the sun. It bursts forth like a radiant bridegroom after his wedding. It rejoices like a great athlete eager to run the race. The sun rises at one end of the heavens and follows its course to the other end. Nothing can hide from its heat. Okay, if we're ready to roll that little video, we'll just have a look at this for a moment, and then I want to read another text and ask you a couple of questions.
Ever since man first looked into the night sky, he knew that he was a part of something much, much bigger than himself. The vastness of the heavens was incomprehensible. The breadth of it all spoke of things eternal. And in looking at the heavens, man believed that perhaps he was really looking into the face of God. From Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, and night after night they display knowledge. So where are we in this place called the universe? Our moon is our nearest neighbor, 250,000 miles away. Our sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth. The solar system is flying through space at 134 miles per second, spinning as it goes. It is a part of a vast collection of stars and star systems. Scientists estimate as many as 200 billion stars are a part of this collection called the Milky Way galaxy. Saturn, of the 9 planets in our solar system, is over 1 billion miles away. It is 1,000 times the size of our Earth. Of the 200 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy, 6 billion of these stars have planetary systems like ours. Every star we can see in the night sky lies within the realm of our own galaxy. Voyager 1 is now the most distant human-made object in space. It was launched in 1977, traveling at a speed of 40,000 miles per hour. It is just now arriving at the edge of our solar system. The sun there is only 1/5,000th as bright as here on Earth, so it is extremely cold, and there's very little solar energy to provide electrical power. The fact that the spacecraft is still returning data is a remarkable surprise to our scientific community. Our solar system, containing the sun and the 9 orbiting planets, orbits the center of the Milky Way galaxy on just one of its outer spiraling arms. Our Milky Way galaxy, the home to our solar system, is just one of over 125 billion galaxies that make up the visible universe. Andromeda is the next closest galaxy. It is 10 million miles away from the Earth. Traveling at the speed of light, it would take 2 million years to reach Andromeda. Andromeda and the Milky Way form a small cluster of galaxies called the Local Group. Beyond the Local Group are even greater clusters of galaxies. Man has no knowledge whatever of what lies beyond this distance. From Hebrews chapter 11, by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. From Colossians chapter 1, and Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by Jesus and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. How big is God? The Bible declares that the endless, eternal universe is just one of God's creations. As incomprehensible as that is for our minds to conceive, what may be even more unimaginable is that in the vastness of all that he has made, he loves you. And through Jesus Christ, his Son, the God of the universe, extends his hand and his love to you.
When Major Gordon Cooper, one of the very first American astronauts, went up into space, he did, I think it was 19 or 20 orbits of the planet in a Mercury spacecraft, which interestingly enough was named Faith 7. On his 17th orbit, looking down, at one of the first men ever to look down on this planet and look out into the reaches of space, unhindered by the Earth's atmosphere, he felt compelled to pick up the tape recorder and record a message from that tiny little speck of a space capsule orbiting the Earth. This is what he said. Father, thank you especially for letting me fly this flight. He recorded a prayer. Thank you for the privilege of being able to be in this position, to be up in this wondrous place, seeing all these many startling, wonderful things that you have created. Help guide and direct all of us that we may shape our lives to be much better Christians, trying to help one another and to work with one another rather than fighting and bickering. Help us to complete this mission successfully. Help us in our future space endeavours that we may show the world that a democracy can actually compete and what it is able to do, or that it is able to do things in a big way and is able to do research development and conduct many scientific and technical programs. Be with our families, give them guidance and enrichment, I think it is, and let them know that everything will be okay. We ask this in thy name. Amen. It was not long after that a Russian cosmonaut, whose name was Titov, I believe, just give you the correct name here, cosmonaut Major German S. Titov, in May 1962, went to the World's Fair. And he got up in front of an audience at the World's Fair and he made this comment. Up to our first orbital flight by Yuri Gagarin, no God helped us build our rocket. The rocket was made by our people. I don't believe in God. I believe in man, his strength, his possibilities, and his reason. I saw no God. I saw no angels. So two men from very different backgrounds, from very different world views, have almost the same experience and yet see things incredibly differently. Let's have a look at one more passage and then I'm going to ask you some questions. This one comes from Romans chapter 1 and starting at verse 18, 19 and 20, Romans chapter 1. God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. So, a couple of questions for you. Now, scattered around the room, there are some group facilitators, and I think most of you have a copy of these questions as well. And if you are a facilitator, can you just sort of wave your hand? Because we want to make sure that we've got at least one at every group. And if you haven't got a copy of the questions, we might get some of those handed out. So just wave your hands. But while you're doing that, I just want to read you this very first question. Having seen what we've seen, and I'd like you to discuss this just for a few minutes in your groups. First question is this. What is the thing that most convinces you that God is real and not just a myth or a fairy tale? So that's my first question. I'll read it to you again, and then we'll get you to have a little bit of a chat about that. And just share from your experience where you're coming from with this. What is the thing that most convinces you that God is real and not just a myth or a fairy tale? Wait.